So today's video isn't about fountain pens, and it isn't directly about journaling, though it is. What it is what I've been reading lately, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What have I been reading? Well, I've been reading the complete journals of Ellen Montgomery, The PEI Years, 1901, 1911. Who's Ellen Montgomery? She is the author of Anne of Green Gables, which is set here on Prince Edward Island in the community of Cavendish, which is on the north shore of Prince Edward Island. I am PEI pen guy. All my life, I've grown up knowing about Ellen Montgomery, but at the same time, not really knowing about Ellen Montgomery, which is why I've been really enjoying reading the journal. Oddly enough, I started reading the journals at the library, and I would do it I'd do it when I dropped my daughter off to voice lessons at her in the evening in downtown, and I was near the library. So I'd go in and I would pull a book off the shelf, and I found myself pulling the journals of Ellen Montgomery off the shelf and reading through them. And the one I couldn't find at the library was the 1901, 1911 years, which was of particular interest to me because that was the era when she wrote Anne of Green Gables. It was published, I believe, in 1908. She started writing it in her kitchen in Cavendish in 1905. I'm also going to talk about a couple other little things that are going on right now, too, in regards to Ellen Montgomery. The Confederation Center of the Arts and the Ellen Montgomery Institute on Prince Edward Island have digitized the original manuscript of Anne of Green Gables. And I'm going to include a link in the description. And you can go online and look through the front, the back, every page of the manuscript. It's really interesting. It seems like she wrote the novel on the backs of scrap paper that already had notes and rough drafts for other stories. So you'll see the chapter one, page one, chapter one. But on the reverse, there's notes for a completely different story. And that seems to be all the way through it. And the other interesting thing about Ellen Montgomery, she had terrible handwriting. I know she would be writing very rapidly, trying to get her thoughts down. It was interesting to see her writing process. You can also see her editing as she goes and making references to notes about what other parts of the story that she would later, in another draft, probably fill in. I have seen the original manuscript on display. Usually you don't see the whole thing. You usually would see a few pages, but it's really interesting to get to look through the complete manuscript. And like I said, I will include a description and a link, and I suggest you go to it. And as somebody who likes to journal, that's one of my main uses of fountain pens. It really is inspiring in some ways to go through someone's journal and read about her daily creative or just her daily mundane activities of her life. And she really does, talk about her struggles with mental health and her worries about being essentially an orphan. She had lots of family in Cavendish. She lived with her grandmother during these periods, taking care of her grandmother, but she didn't actually have, say, title to the house. It was left, I believe, by her grandfather to one of her uncles. And when her grandmother was alive, she lived with her grandmother in the house in Cavendish. And after her grandmother died, she married and moved to Ontario, but she always came back to Prince Edward Island as often as she could, and it was always seen to be in her heart. But anyway, it is a really fascinating read. And the interesting thing is, she did come back to this journal in later years and edit it. So especially this period. So there is probably some stuff taken out, but she left a lot of very personal things in there. She talks about the people of Cavendish, her family. She talks about the creative process. She talks about the weather, which every journal entry she seems to reference the weather. And like me, and like most people on Prince Edward Island, she found the winters hard. Uh, and it's really interesting to read the weather statements in her journal, because I am so familiar with that cycle of weather on Prince Edward Island. I can dress for -20 and be perfectly comfortable. But the one odd thing about Prince Edward Island is it could be -20 in the morning and +5 in the evening, and then back down to -20 the next day and back up to 16 degrees. So, and I'm talking Celsius here. So we're in this big yo-yo in the winter where you get heavy freezing temperatures followed by warm weather. You'll get massive snowfall and then heavy, heavy rain. So then you're trying to clean up the mess. And she talks about those cycles. And also, you get these fake springs on PEI where it's beautiful weather and you think, spring is coming early. And then you get snowstorms and you get buried, and it just is so hard on you sometimes. And she talks about those things. And I'm very familiar with the characters in some way, because like they're also, her ancestry is Scottish, and so is mine. And I'm familiar with the Scottish settlers of Prince Edward Island, and I can still relate to those people as she talks about them, because so many of the sayings are still the same, and people are still very similar to the people she knew on Prince Edward Island. So anyway, I'll hope if you're ever interested, I would strongly recommend reading these journals if you ever get a chance. They're published by Oxford University Press in Canada here. And they go from, there's a volume in the 1800s, just before this one, the 1900s, and they pretty much go up to the point of her death in 1942. And it's interesting. And also, when you look at the journal, or actually, if you do go and follow the link and look at the complete manuscript of Anne of Green Gables, think about the fact that at that time everything was precious, especially on Prince Edward Island. She was living on Cavendish, an isolated community at the time. That there was a train and things like that, but roads would be poor. And in the winter, winter and spring, you would be very isolated. So paper was precious, and it wasn't wasted. And she was probably writing with a dip pen, maybe an early fountain pen. She did have a typewriter, but the manuscript wasn't written in typewriter. It was written longhand. And it's really interesting to look at. So anyway, I hope you liked the video. Just me rambling on about what's interesting me at this time. And give it a thumbs up if you like it. And if you're new around here, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. And yes, I got this at the store I usually shop at, the Bookmark. They have the journals there, and you can pick it up at the library. But if you're off island, you could probably find it online, or you probably can find it in your bookstore, depending on where you live. Anyway, well, thanks a lot. I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.